Hello, everyone. We are here gathered for our first official podcast. We have prepared a lot of things for this month's podcast, and I'm sure everyone is excited to listen in. Today's podcast is hosted by
Audrey.
Indy.
Shay.
and Amanda, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so Voices Podcast is here to give you our perspectives of different things you talk with your friends with, things you are currently contemplating about, or just things you just kind of want to know in general, or things that is currently happening in real life. Since it's our first official podcast together with the official group, this is not everyone, but we're excited to be able to lead you guys on today's topic, which is going to be about mental health.
Internal closing.
Just to clarify, we'll be discussing more towards the term mental health rather than mental illness. Mental health and mental illness are now increasingly used as if they mean the same thing, but they do not. Mental health reflects more towards our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. Mental illnesses may be brought up in the conversation, but it will not be the focus of this podcast.
Yes, exactly. So mental health is something that I feel like we're all kind of familiar with. Since the start of the pandemic last year, I feel like it's safe to say that it took quite a toll on all of our mental health. This is whether you are a teacher or a student. So we want to be completely open about this topic because we want each and every one of you viewers to know that you are not alone and we are in this together. Since this is our first official podcast, we wanted to make it very special and, of course, not boring. Therefore, we have invited a special guest on today's podcast, the one and only person when we think of the word psychology, Mr. Christian. Whee!
Nice to have you on our first podcast, Mr. Christian. Do you mind introducing yourself to our listeners and to us so that we're able to get to know more about you?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose, as Shay mentioned, right, I teach psych here at SPH, and I also teach TOK. I've been at SPH for, this is my 6th year here, so it feels like a while. But I have a beautiful wife named Artha, and here's a picture of her, you can see. And a little boy named Lael, L-A-E-L, like whale, and he's 7 months old, and he's just the most adorable thing ever. And so, yeah, he's basically my best friend, which, yeah, I mean, I don't know what that says about me, that my best friend's 7 months old. But yeah, that's a really quick overview, nutshell of me, yeah.
I love how everyone just went soft.
He's so cute. Like, he really is. Like, he's a. Yeah. I love that guy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Christian, for introducing yourself. Okay, so I was wondering, just in general, how has online learning or online school has been for everyone? Maybe since Mr. Christian just introduced himself, maybe he could start us off.
Okay. How online learning's been? It's been like a mixed bag. Like, I think there's been a lot of really good things that has come from it and a lot of challenges that have arrived with it as well. So like a lot more time with family has been great. Like, I mean, my wife giving birth in the pandemic was particularly stressful, but doing everything from home was really great. You know, kind of preparing for my son's birth, and then when he was born, my wife being on maternity leave, it was awesome. I think last year in homeroom, like I don't know, I can't remember if anyone was in homeroom with me last year, but Lael would jump into our homerooms, and you know, then after homeroom, I'd like go do a quick diaper change and then come back and have class or something like that. And so that part was really great. And that was such a blessing to have more time at home. Yeah, so more time to do fun projects. And like, I think also, you know, we've used a lot more technology at school, which has been particularly good, I think. But Yeah, it's also been tough. I think I started the pandemic and online learning pretty well, but then started gaining weight, started getting sluggish, and started realizing that maybe I wasn't making enough sourdough bread, or learning how to crochet or something like that. But yeah, as it kind of went on, I think it and kind of adjusted to it. It became more difficult. Yeah. So as it became more routine, I think that's when it became a bit more challenging. So yeah, a mixed bag of things. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to add on to that. You would think that with this much time, we'd have more time to like start new hobbies, get more projects done. But unfortunately for me, I feel like during online learning, I've become more lazy, or at least have become more unmotivated to finish the hobbies that I start.
That's definitely true.
Yeah, like I know some people who have started like embroidery or knitting. I think Amanda is one of them. But I tried, I thought about it, and I was like, oh, that would be so cool. And it just didn't work. It did not work.
I like how you can sleep right after class ends. Like me and
Oh,
Shay
so
would
true.
always go like, good night.
In the middle of the day, just casually.
Yeah. Like that was like the highlight of the day, sleeping.
Truly.
The highlight of your day was the unconscious part of it. I don't know what that says. That's a good thing to have it.
I think that just really shows how online learning has been. I think that's a
So true.
perfect depiction of it. I think for the most part at the beginning, I feel as though online learning has been really optional. And because of that, I don't focus as much as I want to, and I'm like not as engaged as I normally am. Because if anyone knows me, I talk a lot, like a crazy amount. Like sometimes I like how they're nodding. 'Cause they know this. And like because of online learning, I haven't been doing that in class, so that's kind of unfortunate. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I personally, when
yeah.
Mr. Christian talked about his, wait, is it your son or your daughter? I'm sorry.
Son. Yeah.
Son? Okay, so I could kind of relate to him. Last year, my mom gave birth to my last brother. I hope, yeah, probably. She gave birth. She gave birth to him last year, and honestly, it was quite surprising for me because like I'm 16 now, so last year I was 15, so we're like 15 years apart. That's a big age gap, and like I wasn't in Papua when my mom gave birth. I was here in Jakarta, and so like every time during my online classes, I would like tell my teacher to give me like a 5-minute break or something because I have to help my mom in changing my brother's diapers and stuff like that. So I could totally feel you. It's quite chaotic sometimes.
Well, that was great to hear from everyone. But of course, the highlight of today's podcast is Mr. Christian. So to delve deeper into Mr. Christian's perspective, Mr. Christian, what do you know about mental health? In other words, what is mental health to you personally, and how do you think it affects people like us?
Well, I think Audrey did a good job of outlining it in the beginning, right? Mental health is just like, it's a balance of how, our emotions, our psychology, and our social relationships. And so I think when we're having, strong relationships, sort of feeling emotionally stable and having, goals we're working towards, and maybe a good outlook, I think we really can flourish. And so I think flourishing is a good word to describe what peak mental health is. Like maybe that's the one end of the spectrum. And I think there's always been, probably for most people, they can think of times when they're really flourishing. Maybe it's seasons of life, or maybe it's in specific moments. And then the other end of that is sort of floundering, maybe struggling, in not all of them necessarily, maybe one or two, but Yeah, so I think mental health is about balance, I think ultimately. And there's a lot of things that influence how we're doing and how we maintain that balance, I think. Whether that's your actual environment, what circumstances you're in, your relationships, whether they're positive or negative, your physical health, school, your faith, all of those are definite factors that influence how we're doing. So, yeah, the second part of your question was, how does it affect us? Was that it? Or
Yeah.
yeah, well, I suppose it only affects us when it's not going very well. We probably don't notice as much when we're doing well. It's sort of like, yeah, if you get like a nasal congestion and you like realize you can't breathe out of your nose, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm so thankful for like just the ability to breathe easily, or something like that.
Mhm.
It's like you don't realize it until like suddenly you're feeling anxious all the time, and or just emotionally worn out, or you realize that your social groups and connections have sort of faded away, and they're not what they used to be. And so you go, oh, like, then you realize it. And so that's when it becomes challenging for us. So, and when we need to start focusing on it. Well, I mean, we actually need to start focusing on it before it gets bad, right? And that's, I think, one of the cool things about us kind of getting together and talking here. So everyone's different though, right? Like, no one's going to respond to the same threatening situation or the same circumstances in the same way. And maybe some people journaling is going to be really helpful for them. And some people, the idea of journaling is like, I don't know, being dragged over a bed of nails. Like, so there's no, one size fits all to explaining why people don't do well. I mean, maybe there's some general principles, but the specific stressors that cause us to struggle are going to be different, I guess, for everyone. So,
I mean, there are also a lot of people I feel like that do actually recognize their, I don't know what to call it, symptoms. I don't know, there are people that recognize that they may be going through something that's not very favorable, and I think like I've had this conversation with some of my friends before, and this may be really deep, and I'm sorry if it is, but it's on the topic of therapists. I feel like, especially in my community, or this community, this SPH community, we can afford therapy. I would say our families can afford therapy, but the problem is, perhaps some parents don't understand the usefulness of therapy, or at least they think therapy is for people with, and I quote, harsher mental health issues, if that makes sense. And I personally, and this is for everyone in this call, personally, I don't think therapy has to be for those that are going through something very, very, very difficult already. Of course, it's very useful for them, but there are also people that, could use it for a short amount of time and then have a long-term effect. That's what I think. What do you guys think?
Honestly, yeah. A lot of the times when people think of therapy, especially parents, yeah, they always view it as such a bad thing. They're like, you're
Mhm.
fine. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need this. And sometimes it's the reason why I feel like a lot of people need therapy is because they need to talk to someone that they might not be able to talk to, like to the people that they know.
Mhm.
And it's kind of interesting actually. I've kind of expanded my networkings recently, and I met more people and like got to know them. Not in real life because pandemic, but as I talk to people, I recognize that a lot of these kids are actually going through therapy. And when you look at their life, it's like you're fine, like you're literally having fun. going to places, hanging out with your friends, like everything. You have such a vibrant energy in you. Like, why are you taking this? And she's like, honestly, just because that's who I am, or like that's what I portray to people. There are certain times in which I just need to rant to someone, and it needs to be someone that does like some for some reason she finds comfort in ranting to a stranger rather than to her friends, because then they wouldn't they would only look at her from the things that she says, from the things that she would like to say. So I think that's like really interesting to bring up too. Yeah.
I think what's really good about this like generation though now is like everyone's just kind of open. Like even though our parents are like finds like therapy like or like just having a mentally like bad day like a taboo, you know, like just having to have like like friends online and them just being able to be like a place where you can vent just because they don't know you. It's like a nice thing you can do, especially with like now just because like it's like in a pandemic sometimes you don't really want to open up to your friends just because like they do have their own problems. It's like you don't want to add anymore. So like just kind of like talking to like strangers and like just having like just going back and forth, them talking about their problems and then us talking about our problems. I think that's like really nice. Yeah. It's like a nice environment.
I definitely see the appeal of somebody who wouldn't, you don't have that fear that they're going to remember that weird sort of way you interpreted some event or like, but I'm wondering like for you guys, like as a therapist is one person, right, to go to for advice, but like a stranger online, do you mean like online counseling or like through various forms of social networking, talking to people that are just like, venting or
Yeah, like people my age, and we have like avatars as profile pictures, it's just it's very ambiguous who we actually are. I personally do not give out any information of who I am except for that I'm Indonesian, for example, something like that. And I don't know, it's like what you said, Mr. Christian, it's just they can't place what I've said to a face. Does that make sense? Like everything I've said to my online friends, I feel like it's kind of detached from who I am in real life, even though I feel it genuinely.
So is that common amongst most students?
Yeah.
Well,
it depends, but
I think those who are like very active in social media, I would say.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder if maybe that's sort of a nice catharsis. And I think therapy works really well partly because we need to process our inner thoughts verbally and with somebody. There's probably lots of caveats to this, but I wonder if the ability to stay anonymous and not be fully known is actually contributing to those feelings. Being fully known is totally freeing. I mean, that's like, in a Christian perspective, that's like the freedom in being in Christ is being fully known and fully accepted for who you are. And that's where there's no judgment, no condemnation in that. And I wonder if outsourcing, maybe that cathartic experience in an anonymous forum. Sure, I think there's lots of benefits to that actually. But I wonder if that also contributes to this fact that like, oh, my friends don't really fully know me. If they knew who I really was, maybe I don't know, that's an interesting thought. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that could be a contributing part?
Darn, I never thought about that until this very moment. And I realize now that that's true. I will never be able to find that kind of freedom in real life, if that makes sense. I can't just keep myself anonymous to everyone forever. you know. And I guess that could contribute. I mean, also another contribution is how lighthearted, at least the social platform form that I talk to my friends from, mental health is kind of very spoken lightheartedly. I mean, of course, if I mean it genuinely and not lightheartedly, I will tell them and they'll accept it as that. But usually just like, oh, haha, going through an anxious episode. And I also play it off like as such a lighthearted thing. I'm just like, oh, okay. Like maybe that, yeah, I don't, maybe making my mental health issues, for example, more lighthearted makes it worse. And I don't realize it.
I think like nowadays people just want that validation that you're feeling okay. I think that's why that's why you like talk to strangers, because it's like if you talk to like to someone that you know, to someone that you know, they'll like ask like what's really happening? Like, are you sure you like why are you seeing it that way? Are you sure this is what's happening? But like when it's online, you don't really have that aspect to like judge. So you're just kind of validating them, that saying like, oh, I think that's like your feelings were right during that time. You know, they're not giving us like any other options to think that it was wrong, or maybe I like, you know, like I saw it differently, or like I'm feeling it like, I don't know, just yeah. I think that's why people go online.
I wonder if that's yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if there's like a strong cultural connection there as well. But I'm guessing that's a universal teenage experience, actually. So
internet culture is a big thing now, I guess. You know, we're all kind of experiencing the same kind of culture. Call me cliche, but I think this phrase is very true. It is okay to not be okay. And sometimes we do forget that. And we think that we have to solve it in an unrealistic way. But it's okay. At the viewer, it's okay that you're not okay. Or if you're not okay.
Yeah, I think I think the problem is maybe people being reluctant. Well, yeah, I suppose it's probably different for you guys, maybe to some extent, but like people, when we present ourselves, especially in, you know, through various platforms, right? We project an identity, but not a complete identity. And maybe this gets back to that kind of idea of being known, right? And so the acknowledgement that, you know, you're not okay might, I wonder if there's hesitancy there because that's a projection that we're not all put together, unless it's like, you know, I don't know, maybe I suppose there's a growing movement towards accepting of mental health issues. So yeah, in those instances, maybe more common, but I think it's important also to go, yeah, it's okay to not be okay, but we should have, like, to be successful, I think we also want to flourish. I think we don't want to just say, let's accept the fact that it's okay to not be okay. We need to, and we need to approach people that aren't doing well, so people can get better, so they can be mentally strong in a sense and have ambition and goals and thrive and to really flourish. So it's we can't stop there, right? But without accepting that, we won't really improve to our maximum potential, I reckon. So.
Very true. We can add on to that phrase then. It's okay to not be okay, comma, let's get better at our own pace.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, at your own pace as well. Yeah.
All right. I think there's a lot of things that we've already said, but I have a limited Zoom meeting. So we're gonna reconnect, guys.
Cool.
Okay. So we've already kind of touched up on a lot of stuff, a lot of interesting and good stuff. And I have another question specifically because you're an SPH teacher. I wanted to ask, what is SPH doing about their students' mental health, or what have you been doing personally in your own classroom to help with your students' mental health?
Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of things that kind of go on maybe in the background that maybe that the school does for student wellness, we might say, maybe not explicitly talked about as mental health. I don't think we do probably enough explicit programs and things like that, directed, like targeted interventions like that. We probably should do more things like that. But I think, you know, one thing that I really appreciate about our school is how intentional and how caring teachers are about just all of our students. If you were to look at like a lot of the chats on Teams or things that are going on, there's lots of conversations about, hey, so-and-so has been missing for a couple of days. How are they doing in class? Does anyone know? I think like Mr. Andrew posted just like the other day, something like, you know, hey, I just looked at the manage back calendar in 3 weeks. There's 4 tests on this one day. Like, you know, what's going on? Like, can we do that? So I think there's a lot of stuff where teachers are trying to take a more active role at managing all of the sources of stressors for students. And especially as a Christian school, being intentional about praying and believing that God also works through prayer. And so I like those are maybe some broader sorts of things that are happening, just sort of ongoing, as a way of looking out for how students are doing. Like, I think a big part of caring for students is also coming down to knowing our students and having relationships, just like with your friends. And for instance, just the other day, a teacher had posted on the grade 12 group, hey, the grade 12s like normally get senioritis. And we always know that it's tough to be grade 12 in IBDP. Like, that's a fact. It's not easy. And this teacher, she was saying like, he was Miss Grace, she was like, the grade 12 seem like they're having a harder time this year than normal. Like, it's not quite the same. And Miss Nedra then, she's my homeroom partner, right? And she messaged me and it's like, can we do something? And then just yesterday in our homeroom, it was like, I think we need to kind of just talk about that. And we just shared a little bit about that. You know, as teachers, we're on your team. Like, really, we really are. Like, we want the best for you and we want you guys to thrive and we care about you. And so essentially, like, there's kind of this plan that we have, we feel like this is important. And so we took some time and I think we just kind of checked in on a couple of people, gave some calls around. And so it's maybe one way of trying to be intentional. And it's not like doing it because we have to. It's doing, I think a lot of teachers genuinely care about you guys as people and your success. So yeah, so there's things like that that happen. Yeah, I mean, yeah, connections are important, and we know that you guys are, yeah, DP is a source of burnout, man. Like, it's tough, you know. You just have to, you're just going through it. So yeah.
Okay. I think I want to ask like around the room, just so that we can give our listeners some kind of ideas. But what do you do to distress yourself, you know, to recover from things like burnout? Mr. Christian, maybe you'll like start us off.
Yeah. Sure. Man, it's funny, you know, like, I'm not like a picture of great mental health all the time. I definitely don't always do the right thing. I more often than not tend to ruminate and dwell on things and, you know, stay up doom scrolling late at night and, you know, skipping work after that and not connecting with people. The amount of unmessaged people in my WhatsApp inbox is just a source of anxiety for me. Like, I know I need to get back to that friend that messaged me 2 months ago and I just like can't for whatever reason. But so Yeah, I'm obviously not a picture of it, but what the research does show, and this is totally true, as I look at my own life, is that helping other people is really valuable. And I think, Cindy, you mentioned, like, we can't be, sometimes it could be negative helping people's issues, or not negative, but maybe we can do so at our own expense, and that's true. But I think in terms of being helpful, not necessarily helping people with their own struggles, but just actually being active and like volunteering at something, or doing something that benefits other people, I think is a really good way to feel better, because it creates meaning. What meaning is really what's so valuable for us as people, is it's not just to do something that makes us happy, but it's to do something that's meaningful. And so if you can volunteer to do something, or even just like intentionally checking up on an old friend and sending them gifts, like those are the sorts of things that actually help you to start feel better as well. So that might be one thing that I know is actually not looking inward all the time, but looking outward to just care for other people is a great way to feel better.
Yeah, okay, I could add on to that. I also do not think that I am a great, what is it? I wouldn't say that I'm the best at dealing with my mental health. Realistically, how I do de-stress is by, like, if I have the time, sleeping, watching videos, or doing both at the same time, or listening to music, But something that unfortunately, something that really actually helps is like exercise. Like when COVID was a little bit better a few months ago, I went out for a run and I felt really good, even though I ran really little. I ran so little. Like basically I didn't run at all. In fact, I was like dragging my feet, maybe I was gliding, but it was good. I felt okay to breathe a little bit of fresh air,
Yeah.
Don't just sleep or watch videos when you're stressed out and trying to de-stress. I mean, of course it's good to have sometimes because it's still a break, but sometimes it just makes you sink deeper into it. Yeah.
By tiring yourself, you can actually slow down, because then you recognize that you're really tired, but then that'll go to like, okay, so now I'm already slowed down. What can I do about it? And I think that's something that could help. Like, honestly, yeah, exercising actually helps, guys. Even if you're not athletic, just get out there, fresh air, maybe take a walk. So, yeah.
That's kind of what I miss about like being in offline learning, just because like usually when I feel overwhelmed or like just kind of stressed out, I usually take it out on like the basket, just because it's like an aggressive great game. Aggressive to people. So it's like, I mean, like you're focusing on that one game basically, and like from that you're not really thinking about anything else from that moment. So like I feel like that was like one of my like ways to distress myself, but since like it's like gone, like I can't really do that without actually having like contact with a lot of people. I feel like I don't really know what I do now. I've been doing embroidery a lot, just because like if you miss a stitch you get like stressed out yourself, so you're like focusing on that more. So, yeah.
Okay, so I personally am on the same page with Mr. Christian and Shay. Like I'm not really good in like stress reliever and stuff like that. I'm not really good at releasing my stress and stuff. And so I usually need like the support. Usually my dad's there to support me. And he'll be like, hey, Cindy, let's go for a run and stuff like that. He knows that I love running, but even though I love running, it kind of takes some time for me to be motivated in it. And usually I set a goal for myself, like my dad and I, when the pandemic has just started, we usually go for a run. We start with like 5 kilometers, and then like in a couple of months we'll go for like a 9 kilometer run and stuff like that around Karawachi. So I feel like that's like a very, how do you say this? It's like a very good motivation, I guess, to just have a goal, set a goal for yourself and stuff like that, rather than stressing about other things.
Well, those, like, all of those ideas are so great. Like, we are still biological creatures. We have a brain and like a body, and we need to properly fuel it and take care of it. And like sleep, diet, and exercise will do wonders for your mental health. Like, it really will. And then I think Amanda brought up this really cool point, which was one of the best ways to help burnout is not totally detaching. Although a Netflix binge is really nice, but to actually get involved in an activity where you can get into a state of flow, where you're totally absorbed in the task. And you were talking about that with basketball or with running, maybe, Cindy, like when you can be doing something and you're not yourself anymore, you're just sort of at one with whatever you're doing. Like, those are really meaningful activities that if you can build those into your schedule regularly, like, they help keep us buoyant, in some sense. So yeah.
Okay. Because our name is this Boys SPH, it means that we represent the student boys. And earlier this week, I put out a poll on our Instagram asking students if they have any questions about mental health that we might be able to answer. One of the questions that we received is how to stay grounded. And I think we touched a little bit on this, and everyone's free to answer, by the way. But for me personally, how to stay grounded, I don't exactly know how to stay grounded. I can tell you so many different things, but at the end of the day, being realistic, I personally am also kind of stuck with this. Like, I don't exactly know how to find my ground. Most of the time, I might not be able to answer it, but what about you guys?
Maybe, okay. Maybe I'm gonna make this like smaller scale. So like, if you're feeling everywhere in a moment, just take the time to breathe. I do that a lot, where when my mind is everywhere, I do the thing. What was it? Breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hold it for 7, and exhale through your mouth for 8.
Was it just me, or did I just hear an accent?
Oh, what? Oh, I did. It came out a little bit. I don't know why.
More sophisticated with a British accent, yeah.
It's true.
Wait,
maybe
actually,
people will take my advice more seriously.
I agree with Shay. Maybe it's just like, maybe how to stay grounded is just taking a step back. This is what I try to do most of the time. It's like when everything is so overwhelming and when everything is just so tiring, what I would do is I would step back. I would literally say, today is not it. And I'll just kind of step back a little bit. And if I'm like already feeling myself again, then I'll continue it. And so honestly, I know that we're like, the world doesn't wait for you, but it's okay to step back. And it's okay to kind of tell yourself, it's okay for me to not do this as of the moment. Obviously, you still have responsibilities that you have to do, but just take that small time to kind of have it for yourself. Okay, maybe okay. I think I'll stick with that answer.
I think something that I usually do when it comes to like feeling overwhelmed or just like feeling very stressed out, I tend to write things down. But like recently I'm getting too tired to do that. So I'd record my voice on my phone, and then I talk about all of the problems that I'm dealing with, and then like in the middle, like break down. And then later on, just kind of like just talk about like, okay, what am I going to do like next? Like what will I do tomorrow? Or like, how am I supposed to handle this? Or like, how am I like feeling now? How can I make it better? So that's usually what I do, just because I find it hard to talk to someone anyways. So like I talk to myself. Yeah.
That's so funny. I do that with I go for a walk with my son every day for like a long time. And and I will talk to him and just sort of self-process and like sometimes it's lesson planning. Sometimes it's like, what do I want to do with my life? Sometimes it's theological discussions. But you're right, like there is something that's really valuable when we get things off of our mind because they just kind of circle in there, right? And then when you say them, they kind of have a bit more weight to them, right? Or maybe less weight to them. And so that's why, like, that's the whole talking and writing or getting them out matters. So, yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that likes to talk to myself.
I don't know if I
myself
can
all
record
over.
myself doing it because I don't know if I'd want to listen to it. I'd probably be embarrassed about what I think. Yeah. So.
I don't
Talk to
listen
my
to it
dog.
back though. I just leave it there.
It's there. It exists. That's funny. Yeah. I think Audrey had a good point. Perspective matters. You like figuring out why you're doing whatever it is you're doing. Returning to that is huge.
Yeah, we also notice how like none of us have the same way of dealing with it. So like always put that into consideration that like if you haven't found a perfect way for you yet, there will be. It's different for everyone. And it may be harder to find for you, but you will eventually.
Yeah. So like how about you guys? How did you find something that worked for you if you found something that worked for you? How many things did you have to try before you found something that was like, oh, running with my dad is what helps me? Like, did you have to go through other things that were like, oh, running is terrible for me or something like that?
That's actually really true. I had to go through all these like emotional roller coaster rides according to get there. And it was kind of hard for me. And I've tried like usually I kind of like listening to music and stuff, maybe watch YouTube, but like that only lasts like 30 minutes. That's the longest it could last. And I'll have like mental breakdown or something like that. So I feel like it took me a while, like maybe start with your like how do you say this? Start with your almost favorite hobbies and then start with your talents. Like when you think you got, you have the most compared to other things, like maybe singing or playing the guitar or reading books could also help. Basically, just try a lot of different activities like you could find around you. I feel like it really helps. And then also listen to people around you. Like sometimes your parents or maybe your friends, they might have like other ideas that would probably be like easy for you to follow along to and stuff like that. So that's me personally, but like yeah.
I found mine. I feel like I found how I would want to rant out to like just get things out because like I have this thing with my cousin where we send like midnight rants. So everything that happens to us that day, we'd send it to each other and then we'd listen in. But then like our schedule got busy, so I was like, you know what, like let me try it myself, and like it worked. So that's what I've been doing. So yeah.
I think something that I want to take note of is that even if every single individual is going through the same thing, such as like the same experiences, the weights that an individual holds is varying. No one is ever gonna go through the same exact thing. And maybe these things works out for them, but it might not work out for you. So honestly, at the end of the day, it's on you about what you want to do, what you enjoy, and how exactly you're gonna approach those things. This is something that I think the reason why I was reminded of this is because of my English class. Shout out to Mr. Clifton for making me read Human Acts. But from there, we were talking about how there's like traumas that's faced and this by different individuals can lead to different repercussions, and those. But at the end of the day, everything is permanent, you know. And again, it's all about the approach that you're going for. If you have the mindset to keep going, to continue to want this for yourself, then you're able to achieve that for you. Yeah.
I think there's something for everyone. Like you will find something that will help, as long as you're thinking about things that will work. Yeah, it might look very different from person to person. Yeah.
Exactly. So there we go. We have talked about a lot of meaningful things, a lot of interesting things, I would say, that is related to mental health. And I think low-key, it's a rant session for like everyone here too. We get to share our thoughts and opinions with each other, and I'm pretty sure we were all able to learn at least a few things from each other, especially from Mr. Christian. I would like to thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. I might have one final challenge for you guys. I know we're wrapping up, but may I? Yeah, is that all right?
All
Go
right.
ahead.
All right, okay. I think I would encourage you, and I could be totally off the mark here, but and maybe you do. Well, I would encourage us to be, more transparent and open with our friends. And as you kind of outsource your venting and unpacking and vulnerability to strangers, I think the more we normalize that amongst our friend groups, the more comfortable we'll be. There's this concept called toxic positivity, which is like, when you're like, hey, how's it going? It's like, I'm great. It's awesome. Like, my life is doing really well. And maybe in Christian circles, we feel pressure for that because it's like a reflection of your identity. It's like, what do you mean you're not doing well? It's that you're not spiritual enough, or what's going on? Or Americans are very victim to this as well. But normalizing and sharing our struggles, I think, is really valuable. So maybe I'd encourage everyone to take a risk and be known to those you trust. Yeah. That's my final challenge.
Okay, that sounds, you know what, that sounds somewhat doable. Maybe it will be difficult and maybe it'll take time, but I think that's definitely something we can all do. There is a lot to unpack from this one podcast. But I hope anyone who's watching this, or at least I hope the people in this Zoom call right now, feel a little bit better knowing that we are all going through the same thing, even though they're at different levels and in different circumstances. I think we can all somewhat understand each other. So yeah, the overall point of this podcast, or at least what I've taken away from it, is we are all in this together. Not quoting High School Musical, And I mean, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I thought of it, but going back to the phrase, it's okay to not be okay. We'll get better at our own pace.
So I think that is all from us. I hope, even though our words were kind of simple, that you are encouraged by our words for this new school year. Thank you, Mr. Christian, for joining us when we've learned and talked about a lot with you. So yeah.
Exactly. Oh, Mr. Christian, you're muted.
Classic. Zoom, eh? It has been fun to talk with you guys. So thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah.
I'll thank you again, everyone who has worked behind all of this, for Shay and Cindy, who kind of created an outline for us for this podcast, and for Amanda, supervising everything and editing. And especially Mr. Christian for giving us so much insights. To everyone else out there, and obviously to you guys here, I wish you all the best for the rest of the school year, because I know we can all do this.
Amen.
Yes.
We wave bye now. Is that what
Oh, one last thing to add. Do not worry, we will keep you guys updated on our Instagram account. If you guys do want to stay updated with our monthly podcasts, be sure to follow our Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube and our Spotify, all under @VoiceSPH. Also, remember to keep a lookout for our story questionnaires to possibly have your comments featured in the next podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode. Have a great day. Stay positive. God bless. And we'll see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.